Afternoon, everybody. I hope you all had a nice lunch. Enjoyed yourself there for an hour and enjoyed the sunshine, hopefully, as well. My name is Peter Rogers. I'm here representing BESA today. I'm actually chairman of the Ventilation Group Technical Committee, so responsible for DW172, W144 and other number of specifications. I'm also on 2 or 3 European standard committees and also ISO standards for my sins, all to do with ventilation. So DW172, as you know, was introduced earlier this year. It's been very well reviewed, and the acknowledgements we're getting so far are actually very positive. It's accepted widely throughout the UK and many parts of Europe as well. They obviously have some of their own standards, but Europe do seem to be taking 172 on board, which is good. It's been translated to Turkish, which is great as well. I think 171 was also translated to Turkish, so it's good that they're actually following it. Australia recognised it as well. There's not quite so much translation needed there. New Zealand and the Middle East, so many, many parts of the world are actually adopting DW172, which is really good. So we have had some questions, I must admit, since we've actually launched it, which is good because we want to encourage people to ask questions and pick things up. Sort of thing we've been asked about access doors, perhaps, where they should be fitted, whether they're insulated, how big they've got to be, where they should be, separators, as we know them as baffle filters, if you like. What testing is it for baffle filters and where can they go to get it tested? Solid fuel is a massive topic, and we're getting a lot of questions about that, which is good. We want to encourage people to ask questions about that, but some of them, believe it or not, are still questions which you can't really quite believe sometimes. When I had one last week where they came on and said, our client is only putting wood onto the charcoal grill rather, every other day, and it's only using it about 20% of the time, so he doesn't feel that he needs justification to have a separate system. Well, that is exactly the man we're trying to hit with this solid fuel section in 172, because if he tries to burn wood on a system which isn't designed to take it, he's likely to go up in flames, obviously. So a lot of questions about solid fuel. Fire dampers, still people are thinking about putting fire dampers into extract systems, so we asked about that. Testing of the canopies, that's a fairly common question that's asked as well. Leakage testing on the ductwork. And make-up air. We've actually had a couple of questions, mainly from people doing schools, I suppose, that type of thing, on make-up air, because what we said in the last DW172, and it's generally sort of known, I suppose, that if you've got a kitchen extract in your kitchen and you need make-up air, you used to perhaps draw in the air from surrounding areas. And if you had a school, which is a great example, you'd have a big kitchen, big serving hatch, loads of children out in the dining area, and they would then use that air in the dining area to come through into the kitchen and use it as make-up air. What we said in 172 now is that you can't do that. Kitchen ventilation is for the kitchen, dining room ventilation is for the dining room, as is toilet ventilation is for the toilet. We don't want that horrible stale air from the dining area with people dining that might have coughs and colds, whether it's children or adults or whatever else. We don't want that stale air coming into the kitchen, coming across the food which has been prepared in the serving hatch. So that's why we've actually said in 172 that they've got to be separate. I can understand where perhaps some of the consultants are coming from the point of view of cost, because obviously there's more costs involved in doing 2 separate systems than doing one. But we're trying to get a better quality of air and a better environment for the actual cooking staff as well. So we're sticking to our guns on it. I think probably some of them are actually maybe bringing in still 20% of air from those areas. And obviously it's down to them what they decide in the end. But our recommendations in the spec is still to make sure they're separate. So that question is coming up from time again as well. So there's also a European standard out, as you probably know, EM 16282. There are 8 parts to this standard. You have to buy each one individually. I think there's a 9th part coming out fairly soon. I'm not quite sure what it's about. But part 1 is general requirements, including the calculations. Part 2, kitchen ventilation hoods, the design and safety. 3, ventilated ceilings. inlets and outlets, air duct design. Number 6, aerosol separators, i.e. the baffle filters, and the testing of them. Installation of fire suppression, as was discussed earlier, and Part 8, installations of treatment for cooking fumes. So what are the differences between DW172 and the European standard? There's a lot more than what's shown on there. The first thing is that 172 is a much, much more thorough and complete document. Everything is in one book, but we have an awful lot of topics which aren't covered in the European standards. For example, if you just look down the list, I mean, we've got considerations for design, so we're encouraging the consultants and designers to think about what they're going to put into the kitchen before we're actually tackling the problems. So that's a big thing which we've got that doesn't touch it. Extract flow rates, types of canopy, materials, construction of canopies, makeup areas, I said to you, lighting, solid fuel's not picked up in the European standards, controls, send attenuators, ductwork, many, many things, service distribution units, recirc systems. Recirc systems are actually becoming quite popular at the moment because there are a lot of applications where you can't get your exhaust duct out, if you like, into the area because it's a built-up area, so they've got to recirculate the air. They're being used an awful lot actually in airports, shopping malls and things like that. So recirc systems are actually becoming very popular. We've even got in the appendix sections on carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, ozone. So it's a much, much more thorough document with a lot more information in it. Probably the biggest difference, I think, is the actual airflow calculation methods. 172, and you're probably all familiar with this sort of format, these figures aren't the correct figures that are in 172 currently, so please, if you get this in your presentations afterwards, don't use these figures because they're not the right ones. But as you know, we have many items of cooking equipment, fryers and burners, etc., and you have a coefficient for that particular item of equipment. You measure the size of it, just the size of the cooking area. You then do the same thing for all pieces of equipment, multiply them out, so you've got the area times the coefficient, gives you the volume for that particular part of equipment. Do the same thing for every item of equipment underneath the canopy, add them up, and then you actually look to see where it's located. It might be in a corner of a room, which has got one factor. It might be an island canopy, which has got a different factor. You multiply those factors. It is really simple, and you have your air volume. Now, with the European method, they actually use moisture content and heat that's actually coming off of the cooking equipment as well. And they've got 4 different sections, so you have to do that same sort of calculation 4 times as opposed to 1. And then when you've got that information, you have to have some fancy, quite complicated calculation to actually try and work out what your air volume is. I can't show it because you're not allowed to repeat the European standards on here, but it is a complicated method. We've done lots of cross-checks between 172 and the European standards, and they are similar. They're coming out similar, not exactly the same by any means, but they are similar. I would say, if anything, 172 is probably a tiny bit higher than the European standards. That's mainly because we've got an awful lot more of cooking equipment that we've actually got coefficient factors for. So that's one of the big changes, if you like, one of the big differences, rather, in 172 and the European standard. Now, another one is that European standard actually allows for canopies and ventilated ceilings to be manufactured in aluminium, which does seem strange. It's got to be coated aluminium or anodized aluminium, but they do allow in Europe to manufacture canopies and vent ceilings in aluminium. UK, definitely not. It's banned, completely banned. 172 doesn't allow for it, so you cannot do that. But if you're working in Europe, you may well get an aluminium canopy. So it's strange that they won't change, but people like to manufacture aluminium apparently in Europe. So that's a big, big difference as well. Part 8 of 1682 is for installations of treatment of cooking, fumes and requirements and testing. It's a section which the gentleman after me was going to be talking about in a lot more detail. Unfortunately, he's been waylaid. His car has blown up on the motorway or something, rather than he's got to smoke coming out from the engine. So I guess he's going to have to use his own pollution control, I suppose, to get rid of the smoke, I suppose, on his car. But unfortunately, he's not here, so you're going to have me trying to explain some of his slides in a minute. The European standard covers ozone-generated techniques, water spray techniques, microbiological treatment, photocatalyst converter type techniques as well. Now, BESA have actually just started, and I'm actually heading the committee for this as well. We've just started a new pollution control standard for kitchen ventilation systems. It's in its early stages, and we've actually come up with a document because the DEFRA document, DEFRA guide, if any of you are familiar with that, has been withdrawn. So you can still actually call it up on the website, but you'll see that there's plaster all over it that has been withdrawn. I honestly don't know why. I didn't particularly use it myself very much, but it's been withdrawn, so there's actually nowhere for anybody to go now at the moment, as far as I know, for actual help on pollution control of kitchen vent systems. So BESA are actually starting to do a new specification to do this, and we've got a committee together. We've had one meeting. It's going to take us some time. I suspect in reality, the way these things go, it'll probably be out within 2 years, but it's probably not before that. Hopefully a little bit earlier, but mainly because there's nowhere else for anybody to go.